You're under arrest if you don't sign this today. The HOA president shouted as she slammed a thick folder onto the hood of my old pickup. Two security guards stood behind her like they were waiting for a fight. My wheelchair was still half outside the truck because I had just returned from my physical therapy appointment. Neighbors stopped mowing their lawns. Phones came out. Everyone watched. She pointed at a paper with a bright red number printed across the top. $600,000. This is what you owe the HOA for years of damage, unpaid penalties, lost property value, and legal costs. If you refuse, we'll take your house. I looked at the paper, then at her. I've never broken a single HOA rule, I said quietly. She laughed so loudly the whole street heard it. You don't get to argue anymore. You either pay, or you're gone by the end of the month. I stayed calm, even though my hands were shaking. That house wasn't just another property. It was the home my late wife and I built after I came back from the military with injuries that changed my life forever. Every ramp, every doorway, every room had been rebuilt so I could live there without help. Losing it would mean losing the last piece of her. The neighbors knew my story. Some looked away because they were afraid of the HOA. Others whispered that the board had been targeting me for months. They had already fined me over things that never happened. A broken fence that wasn't broken, loud parties I never had, and even illegal parking while my truck was sitting inside my own garage. Each time I proved they were wrong, they simply created another violation. This time felt different. This time they came with a number so insane that nobody could believe it. Then Karen leaned closer until her face was only inches from mine. You should have moved when we gave you the chance, she whispered. This neighborhood doesn't need people like you. The street went silent. A young mother across the road gasped. An older veteran who lived nearby took one slow step forward before his wife grabbed his arm. Karen smiled like she had already won. She waved toward a black SUV parked at the corner. Our legal team is ready. The paperwork has already started. By next week, this house will belong to the HOA. She thought I was trapped because I lived alone, because I used a wheelchair, because I never shouted back. But hidden inside my kitchen was a locked fireproof box she knew nothing about. And before the sun went down that same day, someone unexpected would knock on my front door with a document that would turn her $600,000 demand into the biggest mistake of her entire life. The next morning, Karen arrived at my house expecting to see fear. Instead, she saw a black SUV parked in my driveway and a man in a suit standing beside it. She immediately started yelling, "You can't park there. This property belongs to the HOA now." The man didn't argue. He simply handed her a folder. "Before you make another mistake, you should read this." Her smile disappeared as she opened the first page. The document was not from my lawyer. It was from the original property records office. Years before the HOA was created, my land had been placed under a special exemption because of my military disability and accessibility needs. The HOA had authority over neighborhood appearance, but they had no power over my private property rights. Karen's face turned pale. "This doesn't prove anything," she said. "We already decided this house was a problem." The man looked at her and calmly replied, "You keep saying we. The problem is the board never voted on these fines." Everyone nearby heard that sentence. The HOA members standing behind Karen started looking at each other. One of them finally admitted, "She told us the lawyer approved everything." That was the first crack in Karen's perfect little empire. But there was more. I opened the fireproof box I had kept hidden for years. Inside were old HOA letters, payment records, meeting notices, and something Karen never expected to see: security footage. For months, I had cameras around my property because after my wife passed away, I didn't feel safe living alone. The footage showed Karen entering my yard without permission, moving my trash cans, damaging my fence, and even placing fake violation notices on my door. The neighborhood watched the video in silence. The woman who claimed to protect the community had been secretly creating problems just to punish one homeowner. Then came the biggest shock. The man who delivered the documents wasn't just my attorney. He was also a former military investigator who had helped me review the evidence. He looked at Karen and said, "You didn't just issue illegal fines. You forged documents, made false claims, and tried to take property that wasn't yours." Karen immediately changed her attitude. "I was only doing my job," she said. Nobody believed her anymore. A few weeks later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. This time, Karen wasn't standing at the front acting like a queen. She was sitting alone while homeowners demanded answers. The same people who stayed silent before were now speaking up. The investigation revealed that Karen had secretly added fake penalties to several homeowners' accounts and used intimidation to keep people quiet. The $600,000 demand against me wasn't a mistake. It was part of a pattern. The court later ordered the HOA to remove every illegal charge from my account. They also had to pay damages for the stress, harassment, and property violations they caused. The final amount shocked everyone. The $600,000 bill Karen tried to force on me turned into a $2.5 million disaster for the HOA. Karen lost her position, the corrupt board members were removed, and the neighborhood finally became peaceful again. Months later, I sat on my front porch watching my neighbors walk by. The same driveway where Karen once threatened to take my home was now filled with people who came to apologize for staying quiet. One neighbor stopped and said, "I should have stood up for you sooner." I smiled and looked at the house my wife and I built. "I didn't need people to fight my battles," I said. "I just needed the truth to finally get a chance, because Karen made one mistake she could never fix. She judged a disabled homeowner by what she saw outside. She never realized the man she tried to push around had already spent his whole life standing up for what was right. And in the end, the person who tried to take someone's home lost everything she built inside her own."